Some limits define us and others we move beyond. The single mother with 2 kids and a drug addiction, she confronted her limits. The father with a drinking problem, not so much. Every time an athlete goes on the field, he confronts limits. And people who have surgery, they got post-operative limits. Now, whatever your situation is when it comes to limits, you got to ask ourselves a few questions. One, does the limit define me? Is this as good as it gets? Is this my best stuff? Best-selling author Daniel Coyle, in the Talent Code, he suggests that what we should do is stare at who we want to become. Stare at who we want to become. Socrates had challenged us with the unexamined life is not worth living. And if you're like me, sometimes the examined life can be downright scary. But at times, we got to dig down. So that requires analysis, it requires examination, it requires time. And any kind of behavioral change that you're going to have, it does not come from an outside expert. It does not come from a motivational speaker. They might provide the activation energy, but you got to do the persistent, disciplined work to get to where you want to go. So today what I'd like to do is for us to continue the journey, and I'd like you to consider your strengths, your limits, but I'd like to focus, if we could, on 3 words, 3 ideas. Awareness, assumptions, and actions. Awareness is an understanding of what we do. A lot of times I can say, I know what you're doing, but do I really know what I am doing? What are our strategies to understand what we're doing? Assumptions. Once we understand what we're doing, do we know why we do what we do? Can we separate fact from fiction, rationale from rationalization? Do we understand the beliefs that underlie what we do? Now, once we know what we do, why we do it, then we have a better chance of creating the most appropriate action and movement toward improvement. Now, I've been fortunate for 33 years. I get to go into the classroom every semester, and I get to work with students and their dreams. Now, some come in just like you and I. In fact, they all come in with all their experiences, their philosophies of life. Now, some, with the first hint of a challenge, they get paralyzed, they turn, and they run. And they start saying the assumptions. Well, perhaps, I just can't do this. Or the assumption could very well be, my life isn't really that bad. I don't need the college stuff. And what they say, in essence, is, I'll settle for what I have. There's a great Michael Crawford cartoon. 2 people at the altar. They're holding each other's hands, and they're looking into each other's eyes. And then they say those magical words. You'll do. Oh. She didn't like that. Now, can you imagine the ending on that story? But so many times, we settle rather than confronting what's in front of us. Then we have the students that come in, they're fired up, and in 4 weeks, they're out of gas. And how many times do we run out of gas? There was a study done, national study, a couple years ago, incoming attitudes of college students. 1/3 of the students who responded, 1/3, said that when it came to study time, they got bored or quit within just a few minutes. And more than 40% said, I don't even have a system of self-discipline. Now, it becomes difficult to move forward if we don't have a system of self-discipline. Then I'm reminded of the student who came to me, single mother, 2 kids. And I get a lot of single parents. But this one woman still stays in my mind. She was a recovering drug addict. And when it came to her, if you mentioned obstacle, it was what obstacle? She was action-driven. She was goal-focused. She had an awareness of where she had been. She had an awareness of where she was. And she had an awareness of where she wanted to go. Nothing was going to stop her. So when you think of the students who come to me, they're just like this audience right here. We all have different levels of awareness. We all carry different assumptions. And we all create different actions. So we got to figure out where we're going. All right, do me a favor. Close your eyes. Please don't peek. I want you to think of a limit in your life. The limit could very well be, it could be a challenge. It could be a full-blown crisis. Got it? All right, open your eyes. Now, what you see on the screen is a character that means crisis. The first part means time of danger. Second part means time of opportunity. Now, which we focus on depends a lot on the awareness we bring to the situation and the assumptions we make about the situation. Some people, when a crisis hits them, the first thing they do is what I'm calling run and numb. Now, you take my father, for instance. He died when I was 16 years old. How did he handle most crises? He ran down to the local tavern. He drank till drunk. He'd wake up and repeat. Crisis still there, and dreams unfulfilled. And think about it. We do the same thing at times. Maybe not with alcohol or drugs, but, you know, I got that problem at home, so I think I'll stay at the office a few extra hours. I'll go to the gym and I'll work out longer. Social media can take up some time. How about if I just sit in front of the TV and watch that until I'm numb? We have different numbing ways of forgetting what's in front of us. Now contrast that with a Major League Baseball player who hits 300. Now if you're not a baseball fan, 300 is excellent. That's an excellent average. They're going to get millions upon millions of dollars. Think of it another way. That person fails more than 2/3 of the time when he's at the plate. Now how do they deal with that? Well, if they said, you know, I can't hit curveballs, that's it. Coach don't put me in against the curveball, they're not going to be in the big show. What do? They get a batting coach. They say, I'll move back with this foot. I'm going to put my body weight on both. I'm going to raise the bat. They watch game film. They keep making adjustments. They don't focus on failure. In fact, they'll look at the failure and they learn from it. The Japanese call this kaizen. Kaizen are small little tweaks for constant improvement. Toyota does it, and not just with things that don't work. Toyota does it with things that are working well, but they want it to work better. So I had you think of a limit. Think of what you're doing well. You've heard a lot of speakers today. They're all doing something well. What are you doing well, and how can you make that tweak? We could do it with batting. We can do it with a product. We can do it with service. And we can do it so that you can make a better version of yourself. Constant little tweaks. I saw this equation years ago. E plus R equals O. E is event, O is outcome. Now, the event does not create the outcome. It's what we do in that middle space that creates the outcome. Now, a lot of times what happens is people react. Boom. And then consequences come with that reaction. Now, let's pause for a second and think of this. What we can do is respond in that spot. In 2009, there was a tech entrepreneur conference that was started in San Francisco. These tech entrepreneurs got together and said, we're really tired of hearing about all the success stories. We want to hear about the failures. You heard the last speaker talking about how you can learn from failures. He said, we want to know what you did wrong and how did you learn from it. That's powerful. Jim Collins is a business consultant and an author. He has a great strategy, the 5 whys. Think of your limitation. Think of a goal you have. And in that space, ask yourself the question, 5 whys. Why? 5 times. So it could be, I plan on losing 15 pounds. Well, Steve, why do you want to lose 15 pounds? Well, I got a little bit too much Piscitelli jiggling over my belt. Well, why is that important? Well, I want to get in my old jeans. Well, why is that important? You keep on digging down to figure out what is the belief behind why you're doing what you're doing. We can do it in that spot there. There are a couple of ways we can do it. We can, when we reflect, we can either reflect in action, the RIA, or reflect on action. Right now, I'm reflecting in action. As I'm doing this, I'm thinking about how you are responding to me and how I am delivering and what I have forgotten or not forgotten. But I'm distracted by the doing, and I'm going to make some assumptions that might not be correct. Reflect on action. Well, I need some game film. Just like the athletes, just like that hitter, he has game film that he goes back and he looks at what he didn't do right and what he did right and didn't do right. We got to reflect on action. Let me give you a personal example. 7 months ago, I had shoulder surgery. I had a totally torn rotator cuff. I made a promise to myself the day of the operation, day of the surgery, that 4 months later, what I would do is drop down and do 5 push-ups. So there I am. I'm on the beach 4 months later, looking good. I'm going to do my 5 push-ups. And I didn't do 5. I did 6. The shoulder held up. I felt phenomenal until I got home, watched my video, my game film, and I was appalled. And I don't know about you folks, but I look like a swayback horse. My butt's out, my gut's down, my shoulders are like this. Not pretty, okay? Not real pretty. But I would not have known that. I would not have had an awareness of that until I watched the game film. How often do we watch our own game film? How often do we get feedback from mentors? How often do we sit down and really figure out what we're doing? That's why when you go to the gym, people get trainers. They critique you. They're letting you know where you're falling short. And I know when I was a student, and it happens with students now, you turn in a paper and you think this is a novel. This thing is beautiful. And you get it back, and there's more writing done by the professor than you did. It's just like, what, really? There's another awareness level. And that's why professors are always, good teachers are always saying to their students, get somebody else to read your paper. You know, get a pair of them, bring it in to me. I'll look at it before you have to turn it in. That helps raise awareness. So I got a homework assignment for you, okay? Of course. If you really want to stare at who you want to become, you have to practice awareness, assumption, and actions. Got to. We have to do it in the classroom as teachers, students, but you got to do it in your real life, outside. So here's what I want you to do. Think of a goal you have or that limit that you thought of. Are you aware of what you're doing in that space in your life? If there's a crisis with a relationship, are you understanding what you're doing in that space? If it's a goal, a weight goal, an exercise goal, an educational goal, do you understand why you want that and what you're doing there already? Once you have all of that in place, and again, some fashion of your own game film is going to be very helpful. Then figure out, why am I doing this? Is this for me or is it for somebody else? Am I validating myself or am I betraying myself? And those are two vital questions. What I'm doing, does it validate me or does it betray me? Then you're going to be able to chart out a course, movement to improvement, that speaks to you, into the genius within you that already exists. You know, it's said that, you probably have heard that what we think, we become. I'm going to go a step further with that, and I really think it's what we do, we become. It is really what we do. We have to have the awareness. We have to question the assumptions. Assumptions don't just ask for questions, they beg for questions. And then we have to create the disciplined action to get where we want to go. Now, those are 3 great, powerful ideas that are worth spreading and practicing in your lives. Thank you, folks.